them to share their knowledge, and we have professors from the academics and also industry persons in all these 3 days, where they're going to join us later, and they will be sharing their ideas, so that in our college also we can start a small units, incubations and startups, so we can use them, and the resource persons will be given time in different slots. This Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, we will see here how far it is successful, though there were different phases to reaching of $1 trillion, $2 trillion, and $3 trillion. So with the growth rate of 25% GDP, the economy is not even reached to 1 trillion. So after that, a new phase was started. In the second term, a new call was given by the Prime Minister, $5 trillion economy by 2024. So the new strategy, new vision, and new policies are needed here to attain the dream come true. At this brief dream and at this level, we will start our 3-day national conference. And I request Mrs. Shobha, Faculty Department of Economics, to introduce our resource person and our keynote address speaker, Professor Nageshwara Garu. Over to you, Shobha.
Good morning, everybody. I deem it an honor to introduce our esteemed guest, Sri Professor N. Nageshwara Garu. Sri Professor N. Nageshwara Garu is an extraordinary person with multifaceted career. Born in Mancherla in AP, he took his bachelor's degree in science from City College, Hyderabad, and his master's in journalism from Osmania University. He got his doctorate in political science from the same university. He won the election to the Legislative Council from the graduates constituency of Hyderabad, Mehboob Nagar and Rangareddy district, first in 2007 and subsequently in 2009. Contesting as an independent candidate, he defeated the candidates belonging to the major political parties. Earlier, he worked with Indian Express and the Times of India groups. During the last 3 decades of journalistic experience, he published articles in the leading newspapers and magazines like The Hindu, The Indian Express, Deccan Chronicle, The Pioneer, The Economic Times, Outlook, Frontline, Economic and Political Weekly, etc. He regularly comments on Telugu channels and YouTube channel on wide-ranging issues of contemporary nature. Leading websites like First Post and India Times publish his articles. He received the Junior Research Fellowship in Journalism in 1986. He won the UGC Career Award in 1994. He has been the visiting professor at Birla University of Technology and Sciences, BITS Pilani, Hyderabad, National Academy of Administration, Mussoorie, National Police Academy, Dr. MCR Institute of Human Resource Development, Nalsar, and many journalism schools. He is the former editor of Hans India, English Daily. He was the earlier editor-in-chief of Telugu news channel HMTV. He is the author of books interpreting contemporary India, How to Win at Life. In spite of being a person with many feathers in his cap, he is down to earth. He groomed many students who are in envious positions. Though he has not taken a degree in economics, he has mastered the subject and answers the queries at ease. He is an voracious reader and up to date about the happenings of the 4 corners of the globe. He is also a great orator. We are very fortunate, sir, to have you in our midst. Once again, I welcome you, sir, on behalf of Stella College. Thank you.
We have a great opportunity to listen to highly erudite resource person, Professor Nageshwara Garu. Sir is going to join us. Just wait for 1 minute. He's just asking for admission. Thank you. Welcome to Professor Nageshwar garu. Sir, you can start your session. Over to you, sir. Okay. Sir, over to you, Professor Nageshwar garu.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
ఈ వీడియో వస్తలేదు అదే ఈసారి ఎట్లా వస్తుంది పోతాను చనిపోతాను ఆడియో వస్తుంది
Hello.
Hello, sir. Good morning. You can take over, sir.
So, but we are not getting the video, I believe. Is it okay?
No. So you are sharing something. Shall I stop sharing?
Yeah, no, point is, are you able to see me?
No, sir. No.
No, we have been trying, it's jumping.
You are there in the screen, but you are unable.
Yeah, I'm already there on the screen.
I think I have to stop sharing.
I think there's a problem with the link, I think.
Sir, you were sharing your screen.
Pardon?
You were sharing your screen, sir.
Yeah, one minute.
Yeah, please carry. Stop the.
$5 trillion
Okay, screen and share, yeah. Wait for a moment. Screen sharing చేస్తున్నారు.
స్క్రీన్ షేరింగ్ అంటే
Hello?
Sir, yes, sir.
Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah, we are just trying to share the screen.
Yeah, yes, sir. We're waiting.
There seems to be some technical hitch here. Can you ask your technical people to guide us if there is any?
That's present now not you are in test 3.
From our side.
Yeah, we are doing. Yeah.
Can you see me now?
Yes, it started, sir. Started sharing.
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Carry on.
Can you see my face? Yeah.
Not it.
Not that way.
మీ వీడియో నచ్చలేదు ఒక్క నిమిషం.
వీడియోస్ చూడండి వీడియో
కెమెరా ఎక్కడ ఉంది
ఓకే
ఒక్క నిమిషం. ఒక్క నిమిషం. అప్లికేషన్ అన్నాడు.
I need to continue your program so that people need not wait by the time I join.
Yes, sir. You can start, sir.
No, the problem is the video. Is it okay without the video?
No, not, sir. Not exactly. Just screen is shown, but your face is not shown there.
But is it okay? Can I continue with the audio? If you want me to continue with the audio, I'll continue.
Yes, sir. Meanwhile, you can continue with the audio.
Yeah, we are trying, but unfortunately, we are not getting it.
Yeah, sure.
Well, in that case, then I will start. Should I begin?
Yes, sir. Yes, please.
Respected principal, other faculty members and students. Well, I deem it a privilege to deliver the keynote address at this ICSSR National Seminar on realizing the goal of $5 trillion economy. Well, the concept of $5 trillion economy was first proposed by Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the meeting of the Niti Aayog way back, I think if my memory is correct, sometime in the month of May, June 2018. So that was the time when Prime Minister called for a $5 trillion economy. At that point of time, Indian economy stood at $2.7 trillion. So Prime Minister said, India should become a $5 trillion economy by 2024. So he did not exactly mention whether it is the financial year 24-25 or 2024. Normally, we don't measure the economic indicators based on the calendar year. We normally compute and calculate economic performance on the basis of the financial year. So, giving clarity to this, the next year union budget has clearly stated that India has to aspire for reaching a $5 trillion economy by the financial year 2024-25. So this was the task set out for the country in 2018-19. So we have around 6 years to reach the goal of $5 trillion economy from the base of $2.7 trillion economy. If you closely observe this number, 5 trillion, that means $5 lakh. So the calculation is in terms of dollars. So therefore, we need to achieve two things to realize this goal. The first one is there should be a sustained momentum of economic growth, because $2.7 trillion has to become $5 trillion. Even a rough estimation reveals that the economy should grow by around 11-12% to achieve this target of $5 trillion. And secondly, it is measured in terms of dollar. You are aware that the dollar-rupee exchange rate will not be stable. It fluctuates. So it can appreciate, the rupee can appreciate, rupee can depreciate. In case the rupee depreciates, then the $5 trillion goal will be a little more difficult goal to achieve. That's precisely what happened. If you compare from the 2018-19, today rupee is at an historically low level. So therefore, the task to achieve the $5 trillion economy, even in 2018-19 or even today, the two factors should present. One, the economic growth rate should be at a rapid pace. Two, the rupee, the exchange value of the rupee vis-a-vis dollar should be reasonably stable, at least, and it should not at least depreciate to to achieve this task of the $5 trillion economy. But what really happened? So subsequent to the fiscal 2018-19, we have seen the pandemic here. Entire economy was virtually shut down for months. So there was a massive compression of demand and a massive disruption of supply. So this was a worldwide phenomenon, and Indian economy also suffered heavily. And so due to the pandemic-induced economic challenges. So we know very well that in the first year of the pandemic, 2021, the economy has actually decelerated by -7%. And it was in the first quarter of the 2020-21, the economy decelerated by a whopping number. So at the end of the financial year also, economy decelerated by around -7%. I think this was the maximum deceleration in the economy experience during post-independence. So therefore, then subsequent year of post-pandemic or during the pandemic, in fact, the pandemic is still onset. We have not yet really reached a post-pandemic stage, but the second year of the pandemic, that is 21-22, was reasonably better, precisely because but still it has seen the worst possibility, the worst situation of the second wave, etc., etc. There was some pent-up demand, which was witnessed in this last fiscal, but the pandemic story is not yet over. The pandemic story is not yet over. Indian economy has not completely recovered from the pandemic-induced stress. But it is wrong to completely curse the pandemic for our inability to reach the $5 trillion economy. Well, $5 trillion economy to be achieved in 24-25 is essentially 2 years away. So even if you make the rough calculations, so if you take the deceleration of -7% in 2021, if you take the 4% growth rate of 2019-20, that is a pre-pandemic year, and if you look at the massive depreciation of rupee, if you put together all this, today the economy is almost at a stage when the aspirational goal of $5 trillion economy was given by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So as of now, I think my rough calculation reveals that Indian economy today stands at around $3.1 trillion, to be precise, $3.09 trillion. So we are almost at a stage when this slogan was given. So when $2.7 trillion, the slogan of $5 trillion was given, and today it is all more or less the same, with a small incremental addition to the economy of 2018-19. So who has to be blamed for that? Well, it is convenient to blame the pandemic. Pandemic certainly deserves the blame. There's no dispute about it. No one can deny the deceleration of Indian economy during the pandemic. But let me tell you the fact that pandemic onset has begun in March 2020. But the economic deceleration in India began much early. So if you look at the economic trajectory since 2014, you will realize that only the first 3 financial years during this particular regime were witnessing a better growth rate. But from 2016-17, and more precisely from the 2017-18, economy was actually decelerating thanks to the demonetization. That was a very big blow because demonetization was virtually crippled informal sector. So India is still largely dependent on the informal sector. So the cash-rich sectors, cash-intensive sectors have witnessed a debilitating impact. And there was an all-round economic gloom subsequent to the demonetization, contrary to the claims of demonetization being a significant positive impact in the economy. Then came the GST. I'm not going into the merits and demerits of the goods and service tax, but the fact remained that the manner in which it was early implemented and it has definitely created a lot of disturbances and disruptions in the economy. So then came the pandemic. So even in the pre-pandemic year, Indian economy grew by only 4% in the 2019-20. 4% is much less compared to the any period of Indian economy, at least since 1980s. If our 1980s witnessed a 5.5% growth rate, the decade of 1990s witnessed 5.6% growth rate, and if you combine the 10 years of UPA rule and the first 3 years of NDA rule, so I'm calculating the period from 2004 to 2017. In this 13-year period, the average economic growth rate in India was around 7%. So by any standards, the 2019-20 economic growth rate of 4% is abominable. So and this 4% economic growth rate is nothing to do with the pandemic, because the pandemic, as the lockdown was imposed only on the last 1 week of the financial year 1920. So therefore, the problem of economic deceleration was concomitant with the aspirational journey of $5 trillion economy. So 2018 June, around June, July, the slogan was given. 2019-20 was a period of very low level of economic growth. So obviously, the pandemic has worsened the situation. Pandemic has further implied a greater difficulties for the Indian economy. So today we are around $3.1 trillion economy. For the convenience of statistics, let me call it 3 trillion. So we have to reach 5 trillion. That is essentially around 65-67% growth rate has to be achieved cumulatively in the next 2 years if we have to realize the goal of $5 trillion economy, which is simply not possible by any stretch of imagination. So a basic student of mathematics and statistics will tell you that 65% cumulative compound growth rate in the next 2 years is simply not possible, given the fact that we have achieved only average 7% growth rate in 13 years of relatively higher growth rate, both during the UPA and NDA regimes. So therefore, it is a mere statistic, mere illusion to talk about the $5 trillion economy by 24-25. I think the government has also realized it. And now the new slogan has come, reaching the $10 trillion economy by 29-30. Well, I don't indulge in any kind of a speculation at this point of time. When will we really achieve the $5 trillion economy? Well, nothing wrong in setting a target. Unless you set a target of a macro level target, you can't really delineate into the year-wise economic growth targets. It's always better to have a dream, and chase the dream to the extent possible. But in terms of dreaming and chasing a dream, you can't wish away the reality. You cannot run away from the reality. So the fact remains today is that the economic growth it is just not possible to reach the $5 trillion economy. And I don't indulge in speculation because the Ukraine war has an adverse impact on the global economy, including the Indian economy. The global supply chains, which were heavily disrupted by the pandemic and started recovering in the post-pandemic, still remain in a state of disruption due to Ukraine war. We have seen how the wheat supplies have been affected because Russia and Ukraine account for nearly 25% of the global wheat supplies. And we have seen how the steel production is affected, and we have seen how sunflower production is affected. So there is a global disruption, and we really don't know how long this war will continue and how long this adverse impact will continue. Second, the pandemic still remains a challenge. We have controlled the pandemic, but no epidemiologist will ever tell you that the story of pandemic is over. So still the new variants of coronavirus like BA4 are coming. We are hearing of the monkeypox, which is normally seen in Africa. And now at least 80 cases of monkeypox were reported in United States and Europe. Even United States has reported 2 cases of monkeypox, and around 50 are suspected. In Britain, people with no travel history to West Africa, where monkeypox is endemic, is also reporting increased number of the monkeypox cases. As of now, monkeypox is relatively milder version of the smallpox family of viruses. But we really don't know what happens. The Bill Gates has warned that the pandemic, we have taken 100 years for the world to witness the pandemic. The next pandemic may not be in another 100 years. It will be much earlier. And there is a warning that even in 10, 15 years, you cannot completely ignore the possibility of a pandemic hitting the mankind again. So given this kind of unprecedented geopolitics and the situation that the US-China confrontation still continues, as latest as yesterday, President Biden warned China of dire consequences if it indulges in any aggressive action in Taiwan. So we are seeing an increase a repetition of the Cold War kind of a situation where America and Russia, America and China are at its nadir in terms of relationship. So this is a challenge. So the geopolitical challenges still remain, and we also have a serious health challenges still remain. So therefore, it is unwarranted to really indulge in any credible speculation about the $5 trillion economy. So, but at the same time, let us make as what should be done at least. I'm not trying to fix a date for achieving this $5 trillion economy. If the situations are under control, the latest calculations is that India may achieve the goal of $5 trillion economy latest by 2930. Well, nobody knows again. So, because there are many asleep between the cup and the lip, and nobody can indulge, and nobody can give a relatively credible assessment or estimation of the possibility of economic growth in India. So coming to the point then, what should be done? So without indulging in any speculative activity, without trying to identify a date and time for reaching this wonderful goal of $5 trillion economy, let me come to the next question. Why should we have this kind of an obsession with the $5 trillion economy? Well, I may be questioning the veracity of this very topic of the seminar, but I cannot be constrained from making this point. So achieving economic growth output is not an end in itself. It's only a means. $5 trillion a goal is only a means. So there is an obsession with this target of $5 trillion economy, and as if it is an end in itself. It is not an end in itself. Why is it not an end in itself means the growth computations need not necessarily reflect on the improved living conditions of the people. We are seeing humongous inequalities. Even the latest government reports, in official reports, indicate startling widening of inequalities in our country. There is a growing income inequality. We have seen in today's newspapers, Aaatma report, how a millionaire is born in India. So in a fraction of a time. So there is an increasing inequalities, income inequalities in India. There is even during the pandemic, the number of billionaires have increased in India. How can number of billionaires increase at a time when crores of people were simply relying on the free rations provided by the governments? So that was the pathetic plight of millions of people. We have seen lakhs and lakhs of migrant labor walking on the streets. And at the same time, we have seen also witnessed corporate profit zooming. The unprecedented profitability of the corporate sector was witnessed during the pandemic year. This reveals the humongous inequalities in the growth process. So therefore, that's precisely the reason I said growth need not necessarily be the end in itself. Growth is a means to achieve. So we need to focus on growth with human face, growth with human development, growth with employment, growth with equity, and a growth with social equity, regional equity, etc., etc. So therefore, growth alone cannot be an end in itself. So the $5 trillion economy need not necessarily be the only economic ambition or aspiration. And it should not be also. So we need to focus more on the broad-based growth. We need to focus more on equitable growth, we have to fight this problem of jobless growth and job loss growth. We need to create a job intensive growth. We need to ensure that the growth transcends all kinds of divide in society. So this is yet another important point which I want to make before I talk about anything about the $5 trillion economy. Then coming to the concluding part of my lecture, what should be done to achieve the $5 trillion economy? And what are the challenges in realizing this fascinating goal of $5 trillion economy? The first thing is, well, the $5 trillion economy can only be achieved if we can address this unbelievable imbalances in the economy. Look at the agriculture sector. Even today, half of the workforce is engaged in agriculture. But how much the agriculture account for the national income? Well, I don't have the exact number, around 14, 15, 16, 17%. So the very mathematics tell you that 50% of the population share only 15% of the income. And of course, there are still rural inequalities. Even this 15% is not equitably shared in the rural society. So therefore, well, I'm not telling that the agriculture will grow with a similar pace as services sector. It's just not possible. When the economy is getting modernized, obviously the services sector will grow much faster and it should grow much faster. You can't expect all the sectors to grow at a similar speed. Such kind of a artificial equality between artificial sectoral balance is neither possible nor advisable. But however, we cannot achieve higher growth in an imbalanced manner. Today, the entire growth is concentrated in the services sector. There are geopolitical factors. There's a crude oil price that is responsible for that. So the trade deficit is widening. We have succeeded in increasing our exports. Unfortunately, our leaders quote only a part of the story. So exports have reached a 400 target. A record level of exports India has achieved. But we ignore the fact that the record level imports have been achieved. So we don't speak about the story. We only talk about half of the story. We talk about only the politically convenient part of the story. But the real story is that exports have registered an historically record level. India should feel proud of that. But the fact remains that the trade deficit is widening. So increasing trade deficit and coupled with mounting debt problem, coupled with the reverse flow, the volatile stock markets, all these are dampening the value of rupee. Unless we stem, the Reserve Bank of India tried to intervene because we have a very comfortable foreign exchange reserves of around 600 billion. So quite often politicians conveniently equate India with Sri Lanka. It's absolutely rubbish. India will never become Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is different, India is different. But the fact remains that on the external front also there are vulnerabilities. The short-term debt is piling up, so the debt servicing burden is increasing. The trade deficit is widening. There's an increased reliance on the footloose capital or the butterfly capital that doesn't really stay in the Indian economy for a longer period of time. So therefore, we need to stabilize the external front to realize this goal of $5 trillion economy. Third, so India's strength is its domestic market. So if we look at the global financial crisis of 2008, so the global financial crisis of 2008 and the Asian economic crisis prior to that had a reasonably lesser impact on Indian economy. Indian economy to a great extent was insulated from these fiscal shocks precisely because of three things. We had domestic savings, domestic investment, and more significantly, the domestic market. So India's consumption boom is critical for India's growth. You cannot, unfortunately, India's growth is seen as a supply problem. I don't believe this. India's growth is not a supply problem. You give any amount of production linked incentives, you give any extent of supply incentives, Indian economy will not recover. The incentive should be on the demand side. We are increasingly and disproportionately relying on supply side management to achieve $5 trillion economy. I am not denying the importance of supply side economics, but the country's strength is not supply side. The country's strength is the demand side. So demand side management is critical for achieving $5 trillion economy. Unfortunately, there is a compression of the private consumption expenditure. So we have seen during the pandemic and the pre-pandemic, and the pandemic has further aggravated the situation. So the consumption of the average Indian has to be improved. So this can only be possible through greater incentives, the greater transfers to the people. Putting money in the hands of the people is the only solution. Well, I'm not telling give money to the people, distribute money. I'm not talking about helicopter money. But I'm talking about an economic model that increases the jobs and incomes of the people. Because we have a demographic dividend today. But believe me, India has also attained, according to the National Family Health Survey, the latest round, the population, the total fertility rate, TFR of India, is 2.0, below the stabilization rate of 2.1. So we are closely moving towards a situation where we have more number of old people. Still, fortunately, we enjoy the demographic dividend, unlike Japan. Today, look at the problem with Japan. The problem with Japan is they don't have enough number of young men and women to work. So before India attains this demographic situation, we need to invest in the people of our country. We need to invest in the young people of our country. We have to substantially enhance the skill set of the people of India, young people of India. We need to provide skills, education, high quality, internationally competing standards, the better healthcare, better nutrition, jobs to the young people. Unfortunately, we still believe in satisfying the youth of the country in providing unemployment insurance, unemployment doles. We still believe in providing youth with subsidies, youth with freebies. So we need to empower youth to capitalize on the demographic dividend. That requires a substantial reorientation of education sector. That requires a substantial revitalization of the health sector, the human development sector. Unless we heavily invest in people, this was the story of the Asian tigers. This was the story of Asian tigers because they invested in the people. So we need to increase the investment in the people. Finally, we need to enhance the public expenditure. So we have to enhance the capital expenditure because the private investment will only piggy ride on the back of the public investment. So any student of economics will tell you that the public investment will result in crowding of the private investment. Look at the capital expenditure. Even in the latest budget, there was a claim that the capital expenditure has increased by 2 lakh crores. Subhash Chandra Garg, who worked as a finance secretary, has written a book recently on the $10 billion dream, and he has explained at length in this book how this is a fallacy. So on the overall, I'm not getting into details, but on the overall, the capital expenditure in the latest budget has actually declined by 10,000-15,000 crores. If you look at the budget outlays for capital expenditure and also include the capital spending by the public sector companies, all put together, and the capital spending, the doles given to the scheme of 1 lakh crores given to the states as a free interest-free loans. If you calculate as a whole, we'll see the capital expenditure declining by 10-15,000 crores. At a time when we are aspiring for a $5 trillion economy, when the capital expenditure of the government decline, is it possible to really ensure greater private investment? So let us rework the model of our public finances. We cannot still remain in the luxury of the fiscal conservatism, fiscal austerity measures. Look at what the United States has done. Look at what the European nations have done. These are the countries which do not believe in government intervention in the economy at all. These are the countries which do not believe in the welfare economics at all. But still, they have initiated policies that would enhance the public spending so that it gives impetus to the private expenditure. But still, we are living in a fiscal orthodoxy. So India cannot achieve the $5 trillion economy unless we overcome this fiscal orthodoxy. So therefore, to conclude, well, it's a very long topic. It's just not possible in any single lecture to delve into the various aspects of the $5 trillion economy and how to realize it, because these are 3 days of seminar. Many experts will throw more light on that. So I can only present few of my thoughts. Well, I'm not a professional economist. I thank the Stella College for choosing me to deliver the keynote address, but I humbly submit that I'm not a professional economist. So I always tell that I'm an electronics graduate and a postgraduate in journalism, doctorate in political science, incidentally wrote and taught economics out of interest. But you don't need to be a professional economist to understand the economy. Economy has to be understood by the commoner also. So as someone who has a keen interest on the economic processes and economic developments, I have presented my views, and I only hope that the 3 days of deliberations will get into the depths of the topic and will come out with a suitable roadmap for India to achieve the $5 trillion economy. So thank you one and all, and I profusely thank the college management, the principal, faculty for giving me this opportunity. Thank you all for patience.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your knowledge about the theme. Now, the session is for interaction. So, time to clear the queries in interaction session. Open for the interaction. Raju, sir. Good morning, sir. So, you can have some questions with interactions. Unmute your mic and speak, sir.
I'm afraid it is the students who should bell the cat.
First you start, so then they will join you.
Yeah, it's a wonderful presentation as always. I'm a fan of Professor Nageshwar. Though he doesn't know me, I know him from several years. I've been reading in papers what he writes, and then a lot of groups exchange his videos. He's a very unique person, and his understanding of economics, I'm amazed. And he's saying that economics is a subject which should be understood by common man. Yeah, then only people will participate. Then only they will think rationally. It's wonderful listening to you, sir. Especially that you have pointed out very important thing that demand management of the economy is not proper. They are giving too much importance to supply management. You are right. Aaatma Nirbhar is definitely a supply management policy. I fully agree with you. As such, I have no questions to ask, because you have whatever you spoke with conviction and with a lot of understanding. That's all I can say at the moment. I suggest the students to ask questions.
Thank you, sir. Participants, if you have any questions, kindly ask.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
This is Dr. Swarup from Stella College, Vijayawada.
Yeah, tell me.
Sir, in this present condition, will it be possible to achieve this target, sir?
I don't know whether you have joined at the beginning or the end. In fact, at the beginning, I have explained at length whether we can achieve the target or not. In fact, I gave you the figures also. If we want to achieve the target in next 2 years, that is, we are in 22-23. So 24-25 are the targets. So you need to achieve a 67% compound growth rate, cumulative growth rate. You just tell me whether it is possible to leapfrog from 3 trillion to 5 trillion next 2 years. So we took so many years to reach $3 trillion. We took 75 years, I don't know how many years, but we took so many years to reach the $3 trillion. So is it possible to add another 2 trillion in 2 years? Which means our economy should add 1 trillion every year. 1 trillion is 1 lakh crores, that to dollars. $1 trillion is 1 lakh crore dollars, that is 77 lakh crores. You tell me, is it possible? When we are growing at a rate of 4%, 5%, 6%, and during the period of 13 years, I gave you this figure also, from 2004 to 2017, the average growth rate was 7%. So can we achieve an average growth rate of 7%, means 7%, 2 years, 14%. Here we need to achieve 67%. So is it possible? You can just imagine.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Any other questions? Ganapati sir would like to say something. Arpan Sri from Bihar.
Hello.
You can unmute and you can speak.
Ma'am, I told you that I will be presenting on the last day.
It's okay, it's not presentation. If you have any clarification, sir is ready to clarify and add something to your knowledge. It's not
Ma'am, I
presentation.
don't have any queries actually.
Okay. As you are in there. Okay, then if you have no questions, we'll proceed to things. So I thank Professor Nageshwara Garu for accepting our invitation. As he mentioned that he already gave one guest lecture to Stella College in 2021. Thank you very much, sir, for sharing your knowledge with us. Thank you. Now we will move on to the next session. I feel extremely privileged and honored to welcome Professor C.S.N. Raju Garu. And sir is a well-wisher and also guide, mentor. Every time he supported me like anything. Whenever I ask her for any clarification, any suggestion, sir is always ready to give. So when I asked him to give a lecture on the topic, sir said definitely I will do. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting my invitation and sharing your knowledge, sir. So before when I call you, I invite Mrs. Shanti Sri from Department of English and Dean of Arts to introduce our resource person to this gathering. Over to you, Ms. Shanti Sri.
Good morning to all the dignitaries and the participants of today's webinar. I feel it privileged and honored to introduce Professor C.S.N. Raju Garu. Sir is a professor of economics, Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Acharya Nagarjuna University. He had a wide range of experience of 36 years as a research guide, and he had guided 3 PhD scholars and 15 MPhil scholars. Besides, he also worked in the foreign teaching experience of 5 years at Ethiopian Civil Services College, Addis Ababa University, Ethiopia. Sir had a very great experiences and he had a research publications of 31 international, 2 international publications, 1 Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, and Laredo, Texas, USA, and 10 national research publications and 5 regional publications. Sir also good at giving radio talks and extensive lectures and books published. He published 2 books, Macroeconomics and Public Finance. Sir had many feathers in his cap. Besides, as a professor of economics, he also worked as vice principal Acharya Nagarjuna University, member of UGC 10th Plan team for Assam University, and worked as dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, Acharya Nagarjuna University, and worked as a member, Economic Senate, Acharya University, chairman, Board of Studies in Economics, PG, ANU, head, Department of Economics, Nagarjuna University, head, Department of Sociology and Social Work, coordinator, research cell, Acharya Nagarjuna University, and worked as a chief warden, Acharya Nagarjuna University Boys Hostels, NSS program officer, governing body member of Gayatri Autonomous College, Voltage, secretary, AP Economics Associations. Besides that, we are very proud to introduce her and who had received Best Teacher Award from the Government of Andhra Pradesh in the year 2007 and also received V.S. Krishna Memorial Award in 1972. Sir, we are glad to have you in our session and I hope we will definitely get resources from you and improve our knowledge. Over to ma'am, Josephine ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shantisri. Sir, over to you. I don't want to waste time. I will hand over the time and mic to you. You can start your session. I will share your PPT, sir. Not this one, the other one. Sir, is it okay? Sir, your mic is muted. Kindly unmute it.
Please hold on the slides for some time.
Yes, sir. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Having said that, I am very happy. Thank you, Dr. Josephine. And I'm very happy and I pay my humble respects to the principal, Sister Jacinta, and all the college management. Very privileged to be on the same page of today's function, today's seminar with Professor Nageshwar, a very distinguished personality whose voice is heard by almost everyone in the government as well as the common man. A very extraordinarily unique person he is. Please hold on the slides for some time. Please hold on the slide.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sure, sir.
It is showing. Remove it.
Okay. Remove it. Some names ready. Next one. This one. This one, okay. We'll keep like this, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Having said that, Dr. Nageshwar has very, very nicely presented the introductory part of Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan and his emphasis on how difficult it is. There is a saying in Urdu, mushkil, but not mumkin. It is difficult, but it's not impossible. It is difficult, but it is not impossible. It may not be possible in 25, but yeah, it is possible maybe in 10 years or 20 years. I go by the attitude of the average Indian who always is associated with contribution to his community, society. Someone, it's a kind of, India is a country where family is very important. Someone said that in India, you can take a person from family, but you can never take a family from a person. So such is the way Indians work, and I have seen how Indians, even if they are abroad, they always think about India and contribute to India's economic development, and they send to Indian banks the savings, NRI deposits. These are all a very important part of our whole system. That's why it is true that you can take away Indian from the country, but you cannot take away an Indian from his family. Having said that, there is also a pessimistic view about India, especially the current setup. There are very quickly people are getting disillusioned. So much so, there is one thing which Raghuram Rajan, former Reserve Bank of India governor, pointed about India. Indian economy is like one-eyed king in a land of blind. Even though I can't say if it is there is only one-eyed king, but there are oligarchs who are controlling Indian economy. And therefore, no wonder what Dr. Nageshwara has pointed out, that there is emphasis on supply rather than demand. There is, in fact, the Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath is an umbrella program in which demand is one of the important components of the whole of Aaatma Nirbhar program. Economy, infrastructure, technology, demographic dividend and demand. That is the umbrella structure of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. But on the face of it, it is demand. But in reality, what is happening is there is more emphasis on supply. Supply, from the beginning, the policy of the present government is long run, whereas the policy of the previous government, Manmohan Singh and his government, is short run. They are basically Keynesian economists, because according to Keynes, in the long run we are dead. So let us solve the problem currently and solve particularly the problem of poverty and inequalities, which are attainable with the short-term programs like, you can use and then introduce a new program. Most of the programs, if you see, employed by Manmohan Singh, not now, but from 1991, for the last 30 years nearly, there are basically, the approach is multi-agency approach. Different agencies are used to attain different goals in a short period of time. And then we have a new government, a new approach. I will talk to you later about how, political governments, when the governments change, there will be what is called as political business cycles. When Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister of India, certain kind of economic activity has taken place. Now, under the regime of Prime Minister Modi, a different type of economic activity is taking place. So this will cause a chain reaction, a cyclical reaction. And by the end of the second term of this present government, I'm afraid there may be an attrition. And it may become, if a new government comes, it may become almost impossible to run the society, run the economy. So these are the things that most of the current economists are worried about. Having said that, the Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, as Professor Nageshwar has already pointed out, is not a latest thing. Prime Minister Modi was talking about it in the beginning itself. Some people say 14 itself, and definitely in 16 the concept is very much in circulation. Aaatma Nirbhar. Having said that, Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath is one aspect that is basically trade related. If you take verbatim Aaatma Nirbhar, it means self-sufficient. Self-sufficiency is not a new concept. Self-sufficiency was a concept in Fifth Five-Year Plan itself in 1970s. There is emphasis on self-sufficiency, and people are wondering about how India can attain self-sufficiency. If you trace the Indian economy and its economic growth, most important economic step that was taken was land reforms. Following the land reforms, when though land reforms were not successful, to a larger extent, the distribution of land has become a very, very important phenomenon, and many leaders, including a communist leader, Tarimala Nagireddy, has given away all the land. Tadodaya movement has come. Cooperative farming concepts have come. So some activity has taken place, both by force by the government and also voluntary. Voluntarily people were giving away the land. So that is, I think, as a student of economics, an important watershed in Indian economic development, followed by the concept of self-sufficiency, where, Swaminathan, MS Swaminathan played a very important role, and the Green Revolution has come. And on the heels of Green Revolution, we have other farm sector revolutions like White Revolution, that is maximization of production of milk, Green Revolution, maximization of production of agriculture output, and then Blue Revolution, there is a Yellow Revolution. So many activities related with agriculture have come. And in the process, we have attained food grain self-sufficiency, oil self-sufficiency. Today, and again, I'm not saying that the food grain self-sufficiency and oil seed self-sufficiency is still now, it is there. There is now a problem again. Now again, we are dependent on other countries for basic food grains and also oil. But we came to that stage where self-sufficiency was to a larger extent in agriculture sector we attained. And at that time, when India followed the policy of self-sufficiency, not self-reliance, self-reliance is again, I feel, as a student of economics, you may find fault with me. Self-reliance is something I feel is more attached to industry. We should not import from abroad a lot of petroleum products and also machines. The problem is we are not able to have industries working full capacity because we are dependent upon heavy machinery from abroad. So we must have produced them at home, right? So public sector concept has come. Otherwise, we are paying huge amounts of foreign exchange to purchase capital equipment from abroad. And private investment was not sufficient to buy this capital equipment from abroad. Therefore, we have under Nehru and later Indira Gandhi, they followed to emphasize public sector. A lot of public sector undertakings have come. BHEL to Steel Authority of India, so many public sector. This is mainly because we want to provide infrastructure. If you look at the Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath and that umbrella concept, infrastructure is a very important part of Aaatma Nirbhar. What infrastructure the present government is trying to emphasize? If I see, mostly infrastructure means roads and power. Roads and power, golden quadrangle, that is Vajpayee government's emphasis and improvement in the highways, right? And a lot of states have attained power self-sufficiency. But otherwise, in 1960s, the emphasis was on building industries that provide machines to industries, so that production automatically takes place. And particularly India being a country dependent on small and medium, micro, small and medium industries, they require capital equipment to produce goods. So that is why the public sector concept was very much acceptable in those periods. But today's infrastructure concept and 1966 infrastructure concept are different. That is what I feel. And then this Aaatma Nirbhar umbrella, we have technology aspect. This is one of the great achievements I feel personally. I am not totally a critic of every damn thing. Technological impetus mainly came, there was actually a jump from an earlier model of technological development to 2020s economic development. So common man is able to manage a cell phone with a smartphone. So to that extent, the technology transfer has taken place. It has helped a lot. I don't want to go further into it. And demographic dividend. Demographic dividend, yes, there is the demographic dividend is having a population between 15 to 64 years, large in number. So they are all productive. So if they are all employed, people, population between 15 to 64 years, if there is a maximum amount of employment, that means the difference between the workforce and labor force is negligible. That means there is no unemployment, or there is a natural rate of unemployment or less unemployment. Then it will help our economy. But recent statistics related to demography shows that India's population has come to 2%. Slightly, marginally less than 2%. We'll get to know more about this in detail after some time. But reproductive fertility rate has come down. Therefore, if reproductive fertility rate comes down, demographic dividend also will reduce in the years to come. Are we prepared for that? So this is another aspect. And as Professor Nageshwar pointed out, demand should be given a lot of importance. Yes. But in reality, we see more emphasis on supply. Demand is it neglected? That is actually my presentation today. I would like to present to you in a macroeconomic theoretical perspective how Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan has actually been aimed at not only self-reliance, it means depending more on domestic production than imports. That is what is called self-reliance. And under that, we have several programs, Make in India program, right? Make for India, that is what Raghuram Rajan has said. All these things come later. But Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath Abhiyan should be understood in a particular perspective where if you support long-run strategy to overcome the struggle Indian economy is facing. Now, you have heard a lot about GST collections and demonetization. Probably all of you are you might have suffered, or your parents might have suffered because of demonetization. So if you don't look back, you see we have to look forward, not look back. If you look forward, what is actually the government is doing? What is its impact that is going to be in future? Are there in a number of pitfalls? These are my main concerns in my presentation. So, in order to understand more about Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath and the package of more than 20 lakh crore. Aaatma Nirbhar Bharat package is 20 lakh crore. So, if 20 lakh crore is going to be pumped into the economy, what Professor Nagesh Rao has said, demand should be stimulated. Right? We know in macroeconomics, Y is equal to C plus I plus G plus XM. output or GNP must be equal to aggregate consumption plus aggregate investment plus aggregate government expenditure and net exports, exports minus imports. So what is happening to these variables? Households consumption, business investment, government expenditure and exports and imports. What is happening to these things? Will this 20 lakh plus crore package of Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan is going to stimulate aggregate demand? And stimulating aggregate demand again is a Keynesian model. Rogoff and other professors, modern professors, Rogoff, Lucas, Barrow, Sargent, these people say that government expenditure, if you are making it to that extent, you are taking so much into your hands and trying to develop the economy, people's expectations will alter. Once again, one of the important aspects of Aaatma Nirbhar is infrastructure and technology, right? So if you improve technology, farmer is also able to know correctly when the rains are going to come, when the rains are not going to come, when the cyclone is coming, right? When the pests are are going to invade, and what type of measures they have to take. Everything now they know. It is in their smartphone. So with that, it is expected that output will grow. So Aaatma Nirbhar package, will it stimulate demand? And as it stimulates demand, does the output is output going to rise? And what is the current scenario? Why is aggregate supply is greater than aggregate demand? Or aggregate supply is less than aggregate demand? And current inflationary situation shows that aggregate demand is higher than aggregate supply. That is why there is almost hyperinflation. The wholesale price index is 15+%, and consumer price index is 7%, which is very high. And if it crosses 10%, it is hyperinflation. We are heading into a real trouble. So at the height of existing high inflation, if not hyperinflation, I am not saying hyper, I am saying high inflation, 7% is high inflation, and 15% of wholesale price index is very, very high inflation. Because wholesale price index talks about only goods. Unlike, CPI, consumer price index takes about 400 commodities varying weightage from primary sector, secondary sector and tertiary sectors. Whereas wholesale price index takes only goods, that is consumer goods. So when consumer goods prices are increasing like this, and when government is pumping so much money into the hands of public, it is causing a high inflation in India. 7% consumer price index and 15% wholesale price index. That too, international organizations question India's data on inflation, unemployment, and everything, and even GDP estimates. Nobody is able to believe whether data given by India is correct. If you consider the data is correct, and if you consider that it is somewhat manipulated and it is more than 7%, God only can save. If you are going to pump year after year, so much amount of money into the economy, that is in 5 years about 20 lakh crore. And if you carefully see this budget towards Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan, Nirmala Sitharaman, the finance minister, has reduced the budget allocation from 35,000 crore to 20,000 crore. Why did she do that? Actually, it should be supply. It should be demand management. Why she has reduced? If she reduces Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan package amount from 35 lakh last year to 20,000 crore this year, it will have its own impact on the economy. What are the different scenarios that emerge? Let us now proceed. First, we will try to understand the package and then go to the technical aspects of impact of Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan. Now, please show the slide. First slide. See, it is it's called as an umbrella concept, hypernym. It is a kind of, in a literature, it is called hypernym. It's a kind of umbrella concept which encompasses so many other aspects. As I already mentioned, in this umbrella concept, we have economy, infrastructure, technology, a demographic dividend, and demand management. Together with that, we have mainly these concepts emerging, or either finance minister, former finance minister Arun Jaitley, or current finance minister Mrs. Nirmala Sitharaman, or our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. At one point of time or other, they were mentioning about these 7 concepts. Most of them you might have read in the newspapers or even in textbooks. Economics teachers might have read in the textbook. And I'll quickly go through them, right? And if you have a question, you can ask at the end of it. So self-sufficiency and self-reliance. Self-sufficiency is with regard to food grains, right? We can produce at home. And in fact, up to 2015, food grain self-sufficiency we have, like rice, wheat, and then millets and other cereals. We are self-sufficient. Self-reliance is when we manufacture capital goods at home. This is where we are backward, right? We have to import billions of dollars worth of aircrafts. We have Hindustan Aeronauticals, right? You might have seen in the newspapers the criticism against the government that the buying options are not managed by Hindustan Aeronauticals but by Anil Ambani group, right? There was a big crisis about that. Our Hindustan Aeronauticals recently was able to produce one lightweight helicopter. If helicopters are the must for our defense or for our domestic needs, then we can say in helicopter industry, manufacturing, we got self-reliance. We don't have to import helicopters, but we import helicopters still. So it is a big lag with regard to industrial production. In fact, what is an industrialized country? According to there is one economist by name Sutcliffe, who says that 27% of the GDP should be produced by industrial sector. 24% of the GDP should be produced.
Sir, you are not audible.
Raju sir, excuse me sir, your mic is muted. Kindly unmute. Yes, sir. Yeah.
For how long it was like this?
Only for like, sometimes it happens, sir. It's okay.
Oh.
Please carry on.
Yeah, by accident my finger
It happened. Yeah, yes. Touched it. Yes,
and
sir.
also this pad which I'm holding is probably the responsible. So you heard about self-sufficiency and self-reliance, right? So we are self-sufficient in agriculture, but not self-reliant on industry. So what did Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath do to make India self-reliant? Is a question that you have to answer. After the end of the 3-day seminar, you can definitely come to a conclusion whether India is really self-sufficient or self-reliant. Made in India. Made in India is a concept which was developed by Indira Gandhi. There was a famous song by a Bangladeshi singer featuring a model, Milind Soman. Made in India. There is a song very popular in late 90s. So that means that any product we should make in India. And if you see products, imported products made in USA, made in Germany, like that, right? So these products are meant for not only to prevent imports coming to our economy, but also export. Made in India, that is, If you see some products still in the supermarkets, some export-oriented goods go there and come back. Right? That means they are unable to meet the competition in foreign markets and come back, and in domestic market they sell it. So that is as far as Made in India. Made in India is a broader term emphasizing providing needs for Indian goods, Indian product market, and also for exports. And then Make in India is a concept developed by our Prime Minister Narendra Modi. This is a different thing. You have to see carefully. Make in India for what purpose? What are you making? Are you making for India or making for foreign countries? The reason is there is a paradigm shift in international business, particularly after the liberalization and structural adjustment during 1990s. Throughout the world, there is a structural adjustment, and WTO has come. I hope you know what is a WTO, World Trade Organization, and what it did to enhance international business, right? So at that time, there is a paradigm shift in the production and distribution. Some concepts like outsourcing have come, right? Outsourcing, that means laborers can be bought from other countries, either by visa regulations, or by using them in a place where they are actually working, right? So Narendra Modi, being a smart guy, took into consideration that on the lines of the same outsourcing, we can make goods in India. And at that time, India has special economic zones, SEZ, right? Software economic parks, hardware economics parks, right? Remember, all these things were already, the foundation was there for him to launch Make in India. That means Make in India for exporting, for foreigners' needs. And again, this is based upon the foundation that India attains self-sufficiency. And also comparative advantage doesn't allow Indians to manufacture every industrial good. By too much following self-reliance, too many public sector undertakings are producing output at less than full capacity or inefficiently at a very high price. So there is no point in making watches, HMT, Hindustan Machine Tools, HMT watches, or there is no point in pharmaceutical industry government involving, right? IDPL, right? Indian pharmaceutical government-owned pharmaceutical industry, IDPL, and then HAL. These public sector undertakings are producing goods, but they are not, prices are not competitive. So better leave them to other countries and we import them. Even why we have discontinued India's Make in India of smartphones and left it to China and other countries, Sweden, America, and other countries to export to India all the smartphones. Why all the smartphone companies have gone from India? It is because we could not attain self-reliance in making cell phones, cellular phones. And the prices are very high. We are not able to compete with both the technology and also prices. So, Make in India for exports. There are certain things, particularly this helped in COVID time. Covaxin and Covishield being manufactured in India. They are made in India. So Make in India, AstraZeneca collaborated with Indian company to make COVID vaccine, Covaxin, right? So that is other thing, Make in India, by foreign companies to establish their firms here or use Indian labor to produce for them, outsourcing. That is Make in India. And then Made for India. Made for India is another concept which is import substitution element is involved in it. Made for India is import substitution involved in it. So imports are taking away our precious foreign exchange, and we have got chronic balance of payments disequilibrium, as Professor Nageshwar has already pointed out, that we are paying more for imports and getting less for our exports, right? So how to stop it? You make these products in India, made for India, so that we can restrict imports. That is another thing. And to strengthen Make in India and Made for India, we should be very patriotic. You see, from 2014, patriotism is too much in India. Everybody wants to be patriotic. The other day, there was a circulation of a famous poem by a famous 20th century writer, Vishwanath Shastri, Jayati Jayati Bharata Mata. Remember? Jayati Jayati Bharata Mata is now very freely circulated everywhere in all WhatsApp groups. Long time back, forgotten song. There is a controversy about Jayati Jayati Bharata Mata, that once upon a time it was actually considered for our national anthem, but Janagan Mana has come and removed this thing. Why I am saying this is patriotism makes you to be Indian and buy Indian. This is also a concept by Indira Gandhi in 1970s. Be Indian. If you are an Indian, you must buy Indian goods. It is old wine in new bottles of Swaraj movement of Mahatma Gandhi. Mahatma Gandhi went to the extent of burning all the foreign goods. Right? Remember those stories you read in history books? Mahatma Gandhi and his Swaraj movement. So Indira Gandhi recycled it and made it as be Indian and buy Indian. When I was a student, we used to see those slogans in railway stations, in bus stations, on buses and lorries. Be Indian, buy Indian. Again, Mr. Modi has recycled it and made it as vocal for local. Be vocal for local products. Just don't simply buy. Tell others you must buy. Don't buy Chinese products. I hope you might have seen in your WhatsApp group so much being circulated about badness of Chinese products. That is being vocal. Raise your voice against foreign goods and raise your voice for purchasing Indian products. That is vocal for local. And make for India, that is the slogan which Raghuram Rajan was saying. Make for India, because we are importing from foreign countries. Of late, particularly during COVID time, we heard Narendra Modi talking about we are going to go from brain drain to brain gain. Right? Brain drain is where Indians are going away from our country to foreign countries to work for them. A lot of IIM graduates, IIT graduates, even software engineers, they left India going abroad. Today, Andhra Pradesh is one of the leading states in India that maximum number of NRIs are in USA or from Andhra region, mainly software industry. So that is the number of Andhras leaving Andhra Pradesh to work in USA or in Gulf countries, or in, you have seen even thousands of Indians in Ukraine, Russia, China. Oh my God, so many. That is called as brain drain. But now Prime Minister Modi was emphasizing that they will come back to India. It is almost like, impossible scenario. It is more impossible than attaining 5 trillion economy. Brain gain. Making all the Indians who went abroad to come back and live in India. So that is actually the whole picture that emerged. Once you open the umbrella, you see, it will protect our economy. And we live under a system of economic growth and development where there is self-reliance and self-sufficiency, where we buy our own products, where people who go out of our country will come back and live in India. So that is actually the umbrella concept, or what is called as hyponymy. Now let us see what is this package. Aaatma Nirbhar package. Next slide, please. Look at that Aaatma Nirbhar package. It is 20 lakh 97,053 crore when it was introduced under six different parts. Part 1, initially when it was introduced, it was about 6 lakh crore. Part 2, 3 lakh crore. Then you see this progressively reducing to 1.5 lakh crore, and then reducing to 48 lakh crore, and then again raising to particularly PMGK program when it was entered into the Aaatma Nirbhar Abhiyan program. It was raised from 48,000 crore to 1,92,800 crore. And the most important thing is RBI mandated 8,01,603 crore. So this is put in red color, if you see carefully. This is particularly the thing which has both demand supply effects. But basic economic science shows that when government gets involved in too much into economic activity, it will cause what is called as crowding out effect. It will take away the essence of economic growth when government involves, because in public finance we see that there is a difference between public finance and government finance. First and foremost discussion in public finance textbook is about the difference between private finance and public finance. In private finance, income determines expenditure. I hope you all know that. Our salaries determine how much we should spend carefully and how much to save, how to keep for construction of a house. If you don't have a bike, how to save for purchase of a bike. If you have a bike, how to save to purchase a car. This is how households finance are. Their income is first, they consider the savings part. Income determines expenditure. In government finance, it is opposite. Expenditure determines income. If I am right, we are in May, right? Our budget year started from April 1st. April 1st onwards, different departments of government are to send their proposals to government expenditure on revenue account and capital account. Revenue account budget, capital account budget. Two budgets are there. Even this concept was mentioned by Professor Nageshwar. Revenue account budget is basically the government expenditure related to day-to-day activities. A capital account budget is where you develop capital, where it causes, where emphasis is given on infrastructure and power, energy, and then roads, bridges, irrigation projects, etc. and etc. So that is a capital account budget. So all the departments give data for how much is required, and based upon the inputs received, one, and also based upon the expenditures, over expenditures committed in 2021-22, and under expenditure reported in the same year, last year, 2021-22, the current allocations are made. If you see, occasionally employees getting salaries a little late in the month, right? It is not only in state but also in center. There is a problem of payment of salary that comes under revenue expenditure. So this is because they are not able to properly organize the things. We are in the beginning of the financial year, April 1 to March 31st of 2023. So these allocations, in these allocations, Aaatma Nirbhar allocations are part of it. So in this year, particularly 22-23 budget, 20,000 crore only was allocated for Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. Why? Why there is a reduction? It is such a fanfare. They have introduced Aaatma Nirbhar. Why they have cut? Let us see in the next diagram. Why government expenditure leads to crowding out? Crowding out is when the effect of the objective is not achieved. You achieve Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, you want to achieve 5 trillion economy. Mind you, in 2000, on the onset of Y2K is year 2000. We have reached $1.7 trillion economic growth, GDP. Exactly on 2000, 1.7 trillion. By 2020, in the next 20 years, now it is 3.7, approximately, I'm saying. That means in the last 20 years, 1 trillion was added. In 20 years, 1 crore was added. Even if you consider an average growth rate of 7% from 2000 to 2020, how can in another 4 years we can attain 5 trillion growth? A lot of it is expounded by Professor Nageshwar. I am not touching into that. I am only trying to say why probably Aaatma Nirbhar alone may not be able to help us to attain, let alone 5 trillion, even 3 trillion GDP growth. So this figure, if you see carefully, initially supply curve, aggregate supply curve, yellow green line, intersected with demand curve D1 at point A. Output is Q1. Now, due to Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath 20 lakh crore package, which is already completing 4 years since its inception, starting with the 1919 budget, aggregate demand schedule shifts upwards to D1, right? Aggregate demand schedule increases to D1. So now new equilibrium is at point B. And output increased from Q1 to Q2. There will be an increase in output when aggregate demand increases. But the growth of output is coupled with increase in interest rate, not just at the same interest rate I1. If you consider the same interest rate I1, output would have been Q1. You understand me? So Q1, Q2 is the crowding out effect of increase in interest rate from I1 to I2. Right? So what happened in, why such a phenomenon has taken place? What actually is happening in India today? One, Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath 20 lakh crore package was announced, demand curve shifted upwards. And what did our finance minister, Shaktikant Das, right, do with regard to bank rate, or not finance minister, Reserve Bank governor, did with interest rate? Bank rate was increased recently, just a few days back. Bank rate was increased not because of, in order to, manage the show, but it became imperative for the Reserve Bank to increase the bank rate because the economy is stressed and there is inflation. You understand me? So when bank rate is increased, how can inflation decrease? When bank rate is increased, what is happening is banks are supposed to finance investment. What is investment a composite of? Investment is a composite of machine, plant, factory and buildings, plus inventory. By buying a machine, capital good, you create employment in capital good producing industries, right? By making a plant, again, you require workers to work on it. Engineers, mechanical engineers, or all of them. So employment will increase. by constructing factory buildings, again, workers are employed. So it will increase output. But unfortunately, the inventory is the problem to our economy. Inventory is nothing but produced output unsold. If you look at different car showrooms today, they are encroaching the roads and occupying the roads, is it not? They are taking away a lot of urban land to fill urban lands with unsold cars and bikes and so many other things. So that is inventory on which you have to calculate interest. So banks are financing inventory. So how do they finance inventory? They have to borrow from central bank. Bank rate is increased. Secondly, repo rate also is increased. Because repo rate is the rate at which banks borrow from the central bank. Okay, so rate of interest has increased. This is what is called as crowding out effect. We can see the fallout of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. Dr. Nageshwar has presented in a more journalistic way, but I'm trying to show you how in theory it is also possible, how crowding of the effect happens when you implement Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. There is an ISLM model I also sent. Are you able to? Yeah, this is ISLM model. ISLM model, you probably, I have how much time left? How much time I have left? I am left with?
Sir, please carry on, sir.
Okay.
You have 30 more minutes.
In another half an hour, okay?
Oh, yes, sir, 30 more minutes.
Okay. So this is ISLM model. LM curve is the money market equilibrium. Where different points on LM curve you say that money market is in equilibrium. IS curve is investment and saving schedule. That is product market equilibrium. So aggregate demand, aggregate supply model has some restrictions because it only deals with product market. Hicks and Hansen developed this model called as ISLM model, and still it is being considered together with ISLM. Now they are also using labor market equilibrium and natural rate of unemployment. So much macroeconomics has advanced. But let us only do it ISLM model. In ISLM model, LM curve shows the equilibrium points on the money market, and IS curve shows equilibrium points on the product market. So when they intersect, we get equilibrium level of output and the corresponding rate of interest. On the horizontal axis, we measure output, and on the vertical axis, I1 and I2, it is interest rates. So initially, LM curve, LM changes are not as fast as IS changes, because basically money supply and demand are rigid. Basically, money supply itself is rigid because it is M1, M2, M3, M4. The concepts of money, they are determined by Reserve Bank of India. They are generally constant. So, given the LM curve, initial IS curve intersected with LM curve at Y1 level of output when the rate of interest is I1. Okay? So if the increase in the demand for, if there is an increase in the interest rate, as Shaktikant Das has announced recently, 4% increase in the bank rate, and also an increase in the repo rate, and a decrease in the reverse repo rate. The three things he has done. The increase in the bank rate. Bank rate is the rate of interest which is charged on commercial bank borrowing based upon the required reserves they have. Please try to see the distinction between bank rate, repo rate to begin with. Bank rate is the rate of interest Reserve Bank charges on commercial bank borrowing. If you borrow something, you must give a collateral, is it not? You must have some stuff, otherwise nobody will give you money, is it not? You hypothecate, sometimes you show something as collateral, is it not? So what is the collateral or hypothecation of commercial banks with Reserve Bank? Their reserves in central bank. You got the point? There are two types of reserves. One is required reserves and the other is statutory reserves. On required reserves, there is a ratio called CRR, cash reserve ratio. Remember, you studied in the this thing in macroeconomics or in money and banking. CRR. CR is a cash reserve ratio, the ratio between the deposits, cash means deposits with the banks, and the reserves they have to keep in Reserve Bank. So now I think it is about 5%. CRR, cash reserve ratio. SLR is about 14%, if I am right. So out of every 100 rupees you put as deposit, central bank takes away 5 rupees. So like that, all the deposits, cumulative deposits of the commercial banks, 5% is vested with the Reserve Bank. So that is the basis on which you can, a bank, State Bank of India, Punjab National Bank or Syndicate Bank can borrow. When do they borrow? When there is a demand for goods, when there is a demand for investment. Why is there demand for investment? When certain incentives are provided by the government like Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, Make in India, this and that, providing export-oriented growth. All these things induce businessmen to invest, and they go to the bank and borrow. When they go to the bank, they don't have sufficient deposits, so they go to the Reserve Bank to borrow, on which bank rate is imposed. I hope you understood that. Secondly, they can also borrow from Reserve Bank at the with the repo rates. Repo rates are different from borrowing from the Reserve Bank on bank rate. Repo rate is a facility, liquidity adjustment facility it is called. LAF, liquidity adjustment facility. This liquidity adjustment facility is when bonds, short-term bonds are sold and the cash they get is given to commercial banks. Okay? So that is the repo rate. So that is also increased. So when the bank rate and repo rate are increased, look at the figure now. How much the interest rate increased? I1 to I2, right? How much the output increased? Y1 to Y2. So Y1, Y2 is less than I1, I2. So I1, I2, the distance I1, I2 minus the distance Y1, Y2 is crowded out. It is expected that at least that much, if the interest rate is increased from I1 to I2, at least output should increase to that extent. But unfortunately, the existing demand conditions do not facilitate an equal increase in the level of output, corresponding with the increase in the rate of interest. So that is the crowding out. The difference between Y1, Y2, I1, I2 minus Y1, Y2 is equal to the crowding out. So the expectation of the government has failed, right? Under Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath package, liquidity adjustment program, a lot of money is, and recapitalization program, lot of money is pumped into the banks, for your information. But output is not increasing. Industrial output, micro, small and medium industries are still staggering, and a lot of small units are becoming sick. And again, in order to revive the sick units, MSMEs, micro, small and medium units, the government has introduced a new package of bailing them out. So the government every day are taking on itself more and more responsibility. Together with this 20 lakh crore Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, and it is heating up the economy. And today our situation is we have 7% consumer price index inflation and 15% wholesale price index inflation. Economy is overheated, and people are threatening. Everybody is saying whatever they like, and we are going to become like other countries which failed. No, we don't have that problem. We don't have that. We have faced worse inflation during Indira Gandhi's time in 1970s. There is hyperinflation. I was actually working at that time. Every 3 months, salaries are increased. By the time we went to the market, prices have gone up. We used to receive, every day evening price quotations from All India Radio. There was no TV and television in those days. So we only depended on All India Radio, Vijayawada, or Hyderabad, Kuragayalu, Vankayalu, 1 rupee, Berakayalu, 2 rupees, like that we were getting. But when we go to market, the price of brinjal goes up to 1.5. So hyperinflation has taken place. So next slide, please. Next slide. So this one is also about money market, how due to increase in the aggregate demand, interest rates will increase. The difference is, this is about loanable funds. What happens is when government takes responsibility to pump the money, public spending will decrease private spending. Actually, if you look at books to search for crowding out effect, they will say that the meaning of crowding out effect is when government indulges in excessive spending, private spending will fall. You understand me? Increase in public spending leading to decrease in private spending is known as crowding out effect. That is the meaning you get. Increase in public spending will lead to a decrease in private spending. Private spending is spending on machines, plant, buildings, and inventory. Inventory disinvestment takes place. That is a problem. If businesses they'll slash the prices, if they anticipate future changes in the rates of interest, they will slash the prices and sell. Discount sales. Discounts, if a company is announcing discount sales, means the inventory buildup is too much. They want to reduce the inventory. That is what in macroeconomics we call as inventory disinvestment. Right? So, in terms of original demand, that is when higher interest rates rise from I1 to I2, there is going to be a decrease in private spending. So decrease in private spending is indicated by the third line on original demand curve. Okay? So this is the explanation for how increase in public spending will lead to a decrease in private spending on purchase of new machines, building of new plants, or building of new factories, or maintaining a reasonable amount of inventory, or inversely, inventory disinvestment. Right? When inventory disinvestment, they want to disinvest inventory. Why? Because interest rates have gone up from I1 to I2. They are not able to manage high interest rates when the demand has reduced. So this is how loanable funds concept is used also to discuss crowding out effect. Okay? The next slide. There are other problems with excessive government expenditure, like Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. It can generate political business cycles. We economics, we talk about a business cycle means output and time. We use output and time on the horizontal axis and output on the vertical axis. How recession, expansion, peak, and then recession and slump take place. That is a business cycle, right? 4 phases of a business cycle: recession, expansion, peak, recession, and slump. These are the 4 phases of a business cycle. But political business cycles is, I already mentioned this in the beginning. While I was talking about Aaatma Nirbhar in the very beginning, I said before Narendra Modi, Manmohan Singh policies are short-term policies, right? And because they believed that, they believed mostly Manmohan Singh was an economist, and he was an ardent follower of Keynesian economics, where Keynesian economics as such is a short-term economics, because he says that in the long run we are dead. Even at the time, 2014, Mr. Modi was emphasizing long-run economics. Manmohan Singh came on TV and said the same thing as I said now. In the long run, we are dead, right? So this that is one business cycle during which so much corruption has taken place. Remember, in all short projects they have considered, and most of these projects are so inefficient during Manmohan Singh's time that on every 1 rupee government spent, only 16 paise went to people, the persons concerned. Even internal democracy in that party was so much that a person without holding any portfolio, Mr. Rahul Gandhi came on TV and said that he went to Rajasthan and found that out of every rupee, only 9 paise went to farmer. So that set a kind of a business cycle during Manmohan Singh's time. Now there is a paradigm shift. Now Modi is following a long-term fiscal policy. Now a new business cycle. This is a new business cycle where, as Professor Nageshwar was mentioning, there is this more emphasis on supply rather than demand. So supply actually is expected to cause expansion on a business cycle. If you are starting from a slump where you measure output on the vertical axis and time on the horizontal axis, you start from say 2014. It is said that India was heading for a recession. So he introduced certain policies which will stimulate the economy, but it did not stimulate the economy. Right? So it is going to set a new business cycle. During 2014 to 2024, we know correct figures by 2024 what happened to our economy, right? So it can generate political business cycles. This 20 lakh crore package will definitely attract a lot of rich people. Is it not? A lot of this money went into the hands of the rich people. And that is why Indian oligarchs are controlling our economy, people are saying, right? So to overcome that again, to rectify that, that kind of overnight richness in India, our Prime Minister has introduced direct cash transfers to the houses of people. So that will cause a different kind of business cycle. Okay, then we go to, it can be, there can be war of attrition. See, attrition is a concept used in business when you create pitfalls for your enemies. You create pitfalls. Their actions will be anticipated. In a game theory, you can anticipate the actions of your opponent and put some pitfalls. Many people in 2014 warned Prime Minister Narendra Modi not to go for demonetization. Because the economy was such at that time, a lot of terrorists are funded in Indian rupees, that is true, and a lot of black money was there, that is true, right? And people are handling 90% of the cash on daily transactions. He wanted to reverse it. This is a pitfall created by the government so that Mr. Modi will fall into the trap. And actually he fell into the trap. That is where he took for demonetization, and you know the outcome. And then GST is also another scope for the genius of, or evil genius of Mr. Chidambaram. GST is like, you know, like the war and Mahabharat war, where Abhimanyu goes into the war but doesn't know how to come out of it. And the earlier government created a mammoth called as GST and drove even smart people like Arun Jaitley and others to enter into the GST regime without proper care. They don't know how to come out of it, like Abhimanyu. So that is attrition. When this government thinks that some polls predict that BJP is going to lose. Let us suppose. I hope it won't lose. I am not saying it should lose, at least. They will definitely create some pitfalls for the coming government that they cannot work. You understand me? So that is what is called as war of attrition. When a government goes on spending spree. And then if how is it financed? This 20 lakh 1,000 crore thing, how is it financed? It is financed mostly by private, public debt and also external debt. And when potential for fall into debt trap, I said. There is, so far India has not fallen in debt trap. It can fall into debt trap. If India falls in the debt trap after 2014, when the new government comes into picture, That is called as attrition. And what is debt trap? Debt trap is when you can pay only interest but not the principal amount. Principal amount will be the same and you pay only interest payments. So it will be a burden on the posterity. This government made a lot of debt. Next government, they will be spending most of their public expenditure for payment of interest. You know what is called as a primary deficit? Primary deficit is fiscal deficit minus interest payments. You understand me? So primary deficit will be as it is, because interest payments alone are sufficient to manage the economy. Then you fall into a debt trap. Pakistan has fallen into a debt trap. Sri Lanka has fallen in a debt trap. India has not fallen in a debt trap, and it will not fall. I am not advocating such gloomy, pessimistic view about Indian economy. But there is a potential. When you take too much into your hands, when government takes too much into their hands and try to solve the problems which are unsolvable and cannot identify potential GNP and natural rate of unemployment, then all these problems will come. Next slide. Next slide, please. So what should you do? What can this government do? And they are also doing, if you see carefully, they know as if only CSN Raju knows and our finance minister Nirmala Sitharaman doesn't know. I am not taking it, but they are forced to do that. They are forced to do because they fell into the attrition, into the trap set by previous government. Pay-go rule for center and state governments. Pay as you go. Pay-go rule is pay as you go rule. This is a concept introduced in the United States where no new schemes are taken, no new welfare schemes are taken unless fiscal deficit is reduced. If you say 1% reduction in fiscal deficit, suppose now there is 6% fiscal deficit, and if suppose you can manage it to 5%, then you can take up a new welfare program. But if fiscal deficit keeps on increasing, no more new programs. There is a threat now, my dear friends. We are in 2022 and 24 new elections are going to come. And in the election year, they should not announce any new schemes, welfare schemes. So all the welfare schemes that Modi or Jagan Mohan Reddy in Andhra Pradesh can announce is only next year. So what they want to get the confidence of the people, and they may announce new welfare schemes. So to prevent governments from taking up such measures, this rule was advocated by public finance experts like Musgrave and others. Pay-go rule. Don't undertake any new welfare scheme unless you cut the deficit. Augmentation of spending caps. Spending cap is, suppose this year public revenue account expenditure and capital account expenditure. There are two concepts related with it. One is discretionary expenditure and the other is mandatory expenditure. Discretionary expenditure and mandatory expenditure. So you put a limit and don't spend more than that. That is spending cap. How this spending, like putting a cap to the bottle so that it won't spill over, right? So in public expenditure, this year only 10 lakh crore, no more than that. In fact, if you see carefully in the last budget, this year budget, Nirmala Sitharaman has reduced the allocations to Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath from last year's 35,000 crore to 20,000 crore. So that means she is already putting a cap. But we don't know by budget proposals 2023, whether it is only 20,000 crore or it will go to 50,000 crore, we don't know. Because such expenditure is discretionary. Discretionary, that is revenue expenditure is highly discretionary. That is why every day new welfare scheme is announced. Every day new, so that is under discretionary. You can use your discretion and do whatever you like. That is discretionary. And the other is mandatory expenditure. You have to drastically reduce discretionary expenditure like what Nirmala Sitharaman did, and I hope she will keep her word from 35,000 crore to 20,000 crore, drastic cut that is. And moderate cut in mandatory expenditure. Mandatory expenditure is the umbrella, just now I mentioned, in that umbrella of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, the main thing is infrastructure, roads, buildings and all that. So the mandatory expenditure, there are certain luxury expenditures they can cut, moderate cut. They have now incorporated, for example, they are constructing a new parliament house. The old Parliament House in Delhi is being removed, and it will remain archaic and for the only visitors to visit as archaeological thing. A new thing is being constructed. So if you cut suppose some 1,000 crore is allocated for new Parliament, you moderate it to say 750 crore. Similarly, a new highway, a new irrigation project, a new Pulichintala project, you have to slightly fine tune and cut on certain items in those power projects and moderate. It will go a long way. That aggregate demand curve shift, even if it reduces, comes back to say a few millimeters, that will have a great effect on interest rate and output growth. So that is the maximum cut in discretionary expenditure, like welfare expenditure, and moderate cut in mandatory and going by rules. Mandate. This the Pulichintala project is given so much, and we have to give it. So even that they may have to cut. And when they cut, again, it is difficult. The BJP government is bad. Our Andhra Pradesh people will say. But they have to do it. They have to take a risk. There is no other way. Whether they do it or not, we will see in the coming years. And if they do it, that means the Aaatma Nirbhar Bharat budget goes beyond 20 lakh crore. It may be 25 lakh crore or whatever. And then the kind of inflation already we are seeing, there will be possibility of hyperinflation. These are the dangers ahead of us. And then there is a FRBM Act. Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management is an act passed in 2006 by Parliament that fiscal deficit should not increase even by 2%. Maximum ceiling is 2%. Now it is almost 7%. It may go to 8% by the end of the year, because the next year elections are going to come. Definitely discretionary expenditure is now going to rise. Even mandatory expenditure is going to rise because so many projects will become standstill. Are you hearing me, Dr. Josephine?
Sir, yes, sir.
Am I audible?
You are audible, sir.
Yeah. So there is no power in our house.
That's what. We are unable to see you. You are unable to see, but
I am managing it.
Voice is audible. Voice is audible.
Figure is not shown much. My image, because there is no light.
Yes, sir. We understood that. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I will see. So FRBM Act is Fiscal Responsibility and Budgetary Management Act. And then if it is, say, for example, we are not able to get 2%, we never got it. Maybe in the first year under then Finance Minister Yashwant Sinha, 2% they might have got, but slowly it went to 3 to 4, 4 to 5 like that. So now you can bring about an amendment to make it more realistic, like 4% or something like that instead of 2%. That is another probable way in which we can control excessive government expenditure. Okay, I think that is the end of it. Am I right? So having said that, Aaatma Nirbhar Bharat is very important.
Sorry to disturb you, sir. Sagar Babu garu, kindly stop sharing. Sagar Babu garu, kindly stop sharing your screen, please. Sir is speaking. Thank you.
Yeah. This is my last slide, right? Dr. Josephine, this is my
Yes,
last
sir.
slide.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So with that, I have actually presented one important thing that Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath is good. There nobody can deny it. As Dr. Nageshwar has identified, we should stimulate demand, not supply. Too much emphasis is given to supply, but not demand, because of which a lot of inequalities have taken place and government is overburdened. Now, carefully we have to manage the demand. That is where out of the C plus I plus G, household, government and business, government should slowly reduce its role and give more emphasis to private business. And it is in this sense, liquidity adjustment facility and capital recapitalization are the two policies which will go a long way in mitigating adverse impact of government expenditure. Liquidity adjustment facility is done through two means, if I am right. Liquidity adjustment facility is done by two means. One is the repo rate, and the other is reverse repo rate. Repo rate is the rate of interest which Reserve Bank charges on commercial bank borrowing by selling short-term bonds and securities. Reverse repo rate is the rate of interest which Reserve Bank gives to commercial banks on the reserves parked in central bank, right? So if they lower the reverse repo rate, banks will be either withdrawing the excess amount of money that is parked in the Reserve Bank and thereby lend to public, lend to business, and thereby increase the investment. The role of reverse repo rate once again is, when the reverse repo rate is reduced, banks will find it uneconomical to keep or park their excess reserves in the central bank. So they will withdraw money from cash from central bank and use it for lending purposes, where businesses can either use it for buying plants or machines or construct buildings or build up inventory or maintain the existing inventory, so that prices will not fall. And then increase the repo rate. Increasing the repo rate will discourage banks from borrowing from the central bank, right? So thereby they will not lend for inventory purposes. Present scenario is business is mostly investing in inventory. Even sudden shortages of onions, sudden shortage of consumer goods like sugar is because of inventory building by business. They borrow money at the current price. They can borrow even at a higher rate of interest and keep all these products in the godowns. And the shortages come in the market and prices increase. So liquidity adjustment facility is often used by Reserve Bank to control the prices, especially when economy is overheated by excessive government expenditure. I hope you distinguish the problem. And then banks are facing capital problems, right? So capital infusion or recapitalization is another step taken by Government of India to help the banks from being run over. So these are the two steps that are also suggested to minimize the impact of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath. Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath as such is a good policy. But what actually Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath has done to our economy, what are the slogans that we are hearing, have they translated into something good, we'll know only after 2024 or 25 or 26. Is it not? Impact studies have still to come. Both research scholars as well as government organization like Statistical Survey of India, National Sample Survey data, on all these things will come later. And I wonder how much government will allow these organizations, ISO and National NSSO, to independently, freely publish data. And already Western countries, there is a lot of difference between what Government of India gives data and what World Bank data is it not? So, what Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath has done to India, or all of us, will come to know much later. But at the moment, we are facing the hyperinflation problem. We are heading in towards hyperinflation. Salaries may be doubled or tripled, but output will not increase. A concept which Dr. Nageshwar also mentioned, right? Jobless growth, right? So these are the issues that are going to come, and I think government is sincerely trying to minimize the negative effects of or crowding out effect of excessive government expenditure by stimulating commercial banks and central bank through liquidity adjustment program and capital infusion programs, about which probably some other speaker will speak in the next 3 days. Thank you very much, Dr. Josephine. I thank all of you who participated in it. I see that right now only 11 people are in the among viewers, but I hope the material will be passed on to everyone. And I take it as a privilege once again and appreciate the hard work. In spite of so many problems, I was shocked to see hacking done first time in a webinar. Hacking, I found the webinar is hacked by some outside forces. In spite of that, I appreciate you, and I'm deeply beholden to you for giving me an opportunity to share my knowledge, my macroeconomics knowledge, to whoever is left. Only 11 people are left here. And once again, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for sharing your knowledge. Yes, sir, really we are a little bit upset with that hacking and everything. And also from the morning onwards, there was a problem in power here also in the college. We were able to adjust somewhere, one room, not in our department, some other room we are sitting here and we are doing the work. It will be sorted out by afternoon, hopefully. Now the forum is open for interaction. I request all the participants, if you have any queries, any questions, any clarifications, kindly post now. Over to the participants.
Sir, good afternoon, sir. This is Bhavani.
No, ma'am, something happened to sir's voice. I think there also power problem is there. Sir already
No
mentioned.
power problem.
Yeah, sir, Bhavani ma'am wants to ask something.
Yeah.
Yes, madam.
Sir,
There
good
is no power in my house, so.
Not a question specifically, but that is even I was on and off in terms of I wanted to listen to you, but there are some academic duties here. For that reason, I was unable to completely focus on, but some of the screenshots I have taken, I'm able to understand that you have explained it through ISLM model, and also that Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath as an umbrella program. Sir, maybe you must have spoke about it. What about the impact of freebies on Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath? Is there any positive impact?
Freebies are to some extent are necessary to stimulate aggregate demand. Actually, government expenditure should translate into transfers, right?
Right.
A good government expenditure is when greater part of government expenditure goes toward transfers, and government makes a good expenditure on capital account. Ultimately, it is a capital account of government which is a stimulating factor. But since consumption is low throughout the world, or even Raghuram Rajan and other economists are suggesting, Arvind Panagari are suggesting that you should pump money into the hands of the people. Remember 1 year back, that is the thing, during COVID time. People are having no work, and so they must get it. But the problem is, if you pump a lot of money to people, it will lead to increase in consumption, right? And if there is an increase in consumption, or if consumption fall is revived, businesses again get revived, right? So, and again, as incomes increase, given the propensity to consume, savings will increase. When savings increase, banks again will have excess reserves and bank lending will increase. And together with increase in demand, theoretically I'm saying, investment increases, and so it is good for the economy. And even remember Dr. Bhavani, at that time, 1 year back, people were talking about direct transfers. There is one scheme where we have to give, everybody should be given. No, what is it? What is that called as? Universal Basic Income, UBI. Universal Basic Income concept was highlighted 1 year back. So much amount of consumption is down 1 year back that the people were propagating universal basic income. And I don't have anything about money being paid to poor people so that consumption is maintained. Having accepted that, who is actually getting it? Is the money properly going into their accounts? Still, studies have to come out. Earlier studies of Manmohan Singh and his welfare programs, that out of 1 rupee only 9% are going to poor man, came only at the end of his term. Right? Only at the end of his term people were able to see it. But now how Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath and freebies have impact, whether really the freebies have gone to the common man, how much actually out of 1 rupee it has gone? Have you ever seen anywhere in the paper all these months anybody writing about how much out of 1 rupee actually went to poor man? Are they able to say 100% the money went to poor? These are the questions we will know only after some time. If it really happened, the thing would not have been as bad as this today.
Thank you, sir.
I request any of the participants would like to speak or would like to get a clarification from sir. So as no one responded,
Yeah, no problem.
then I'll proceed. So we are very happy and
Macroeconomics is a very tough topic, sir. So for that reason, maybe only they understood, unable to ask more queries because they should know it.
Only I want to really make people to common. Mr. Dr. Nageshwar was mentioning that economics should be made in such a way that common man should also understand. That is one of the things he said. I really appreciate that. Even though he is not an economics man, his knowledge of economics is much more than most of us. However, I want to popularize the subject by saying, connecting Aaatma Nirbhar with economic theory, not to actually denounce Aaatma Nirbhar. You understand it? And I want to use that crowding out, how actually it crowded out, and how when I am seeing actually things happening and hyperinflation, India is heading towards hyperinflation, a lot of unemployment. I felt that it has not achieved its targets. And probably after some revival that is bound to take place, any economy is bound to rebound. I am hoping that India will rebound after 2023 or 24 or 25, and attrition doesn't take place. Bhavani, I was mentioning about attrition. Attrition is one, if one government thinks that they are going to fall, they create certain hurdles for the coming government. That is attrition I try to highlight. So by the time next government, tries to rectify, their term is over. And so what they will do, they will create some hurdles for the coming government. So it keeps on. Some economists were talking about political business cycles. So it causes political business cycles and without really something happening. To a larger extent, the Vajpayee following Narasimha Rao, and then Manmohan Singh following Vajpayee, there is a continuity, you know. They did not try to create hurdles to the coming government. But whereas in 2014, I feel that Chidambaram definitely created a problem of impossibility of management of GST at least, and demonetization is a self-inflicted problem of Mr. Modi, which is causing still a lot of problems. Attrition, I think I particularly consider this should not happen. There should be a continuity. Whatever is the steps taken by Mr. Modi, they should continue even if the other government comes. Or this government should not regret. Regret is the worst kind of thing a government should do, Bhavani. This government should not regret and try to undo what they did. I think Aaatma Nirbhar is good enough. Only thing is, as I said, it has to do some checks and adjustments, and use effectively liquidity adjustment program and go on with the recapitalization and the capital infusion of the financial institutions, and taking care of the sick units. Another 5 years to undo or to repair the economy, it will take place. So either this government should, if it comes again, should not undo what they did, or a new government, if it comes, should continue the policy.
Anyone would like to ask anything? Swarup sir, you are online. You have anything to say? So we have.
Good morning, sir. It's my proud privilege to hear such an excellent lecture from you, sir. Really, it was a very good learning experience, sir. I am thankful to you have applied that model into this LM. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for gracing our this webinar, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
I am very grateful to you. Fantastic. Thank you.
I have no questions, sir. Thank you, sir.
Welcome.
So we were very happy, and it's an opportunity for us to listen to you and sharing your knowledge. We know that you are a highly erudite person, but your session was really touching the macroeconomic concepts, which no one will dare to touch it. We know that it's like the theoretical perspective, and also you mentioned about the crowding out effect. Yes, sir. All the slides what you explained is absolutely correct. We too also discussing about that the demand effect is should be given more important than the supply effect, as you mentioned, and we will discuss in the further sessions also, sir. Thank you very much for joining. Namaste, sir. I request any of the participants are from VIT Amaravati University to present the papers. Actually, the schedule was given to them. They have to be here by 12 o'clock. I requested them to be here. So they said they have some examination is there. They are unable to come. So we will wind up the session here, and we will join at exactly 1:45 for the next session. I request all the participants join at 1 minute. Just now, Mahendra Chaudhary from VIT student joined. Are you ready to present your paper, Mr. Mahendra? Third year BTech student. Kindly proceed.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, yeah, Mahendra. Kindly share your screen and you can present your paper. Mahendra from VIT AP, Amaravati. You can share your screen and present the paper.
Is it visible, ma'am?
No, not visible. Your sharing can be seen. Yeah, now it's okay.
Yes, ma'am. My paper is on self-reliant economy, experiences from the pre and post in independent India. So I wrote this paper on Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, the 5 trillion economy goal. And during the recent coronavirus pandemic, the government of India has issued a goal for the economy to be self-reliant and to reach 5 trillion by 2025. So I have taken few points like MSMEs and self-reliant economy and sustainable development into this paper. As India is a diverse country and has various issues and problems, and we have the enough economic and population and skilled workforce to overcome all those problems. And the goals of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath are like helping the businesses, including micro, small and medium industries, and to help the poor and migrant workers and farmers, and to revamp and to help the agriculture sector to boost, as 60% of Indian workforce works in the agriculture sector, and to do some reforms as in ease of doing business and labor laws to help with the growth of the country. And we have also recently seen steps like the privatization of public companies like LIC and many defense companies, etc. And there is merger and demergers of banks also. And I have also taken care with our experience in previous skill training, like previously we used to do skill training and we tried to bring reforms and brought a multidisciplinary education program to develop standards and for the new developing skills and current requirements. And the role of MSMEs, as local manufacturing can boost the economy and reduce the imports and help us grow our exports also, and cultivating a scape of innovation and involving all genders and groups of society in manufacturing and developing their own businesses. So by taking care of our skill training like Skill India, etc., and our new avenues like startups, and promoting more ease of doing business and economic freedom and liberalization, and supporting the agriculture, we can reach our goal of Aaatma Nirbhar Bharath, a 5 trillion economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahendra, presenting your paper. Your college, Aditya is there, Mahendra?
I don't think so, ma'am. Just
Okay.
a minute.
Okay, fine. Okay, fine. It's 12:30. We will wind up the session now, and we will come back at 1:45 sharply for the next technical session 2 and other paper presentations. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. We will meet at 1:45 in the afternoon for the next session. Thank you.